think at the time, when that 100 megaton bomb goes off, this isn't going to help me much. I don't, it just seemed kind of absurd to me. Say again? Yeah, really. It didn't make any sense to me, but I guess you got to do something, right? At least pretend, yeah. I mean, I remember thinking at the time, if the bomb drops, I'd rather be at ground zero. I want to go. Let's go. I don't want to hang around dying of radiation sickness or whatever else is going to be the fallout from that. But then, we see what's going on around us. And, who would have thought? Who would have thought you got men marrying men, women marrying women, men born men, but they don't want to be men anymore, so they go and have surgery to become a woman, and the other way around. It's just crazy. There's just a societal insanity that seems to be grabbing us, and I think we saw evidence of it on this week when that thing was passed. Just by way of, say again? New York, they passed a new abortion bill. I'll get into it here in a moment, but it was an abortion bill. They actually passed it on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and it extended and protected abortion rights. And basically, what the evil part of the bill was that a baby can be aborted up to moments before its birth. It's a fully formed baby, perfectly capable of surviving if it's allowed to be born, but in the moments before it's born, it can still be disposed of and killed, and which to me was just appalling. But
the abortion fails and it's born alive, it's going to kill.
Yes, exactly, exactly, and it's just hideous and it's insidious to me. Like I said, societal insanity. We have no idea. There's no moral foundation for what they're doing. But I was thinking of some verses came to my mind as we thought about all of this. Proverbs 6:16-19. It says, "These 6 things doth the Lord hate; yea, 7 are an abomination unto him: a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood." And Exodus 20:13, "Thou shalt not kill. Cursed be he that taketh a reward to slay an innocent person. All the people shall say, Amen." Well, we have a whole industry taking reward for slaying these children, these innocent souls. And I remember when Christ rebuked his disciples, when the children were coming to him, he says, "Rebuke them not, suffer the children to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." Sometimes I wonder if when we get to heaven, we're going to find out that the vast majority of heaven are the little children who have died. And what's the number up to for our country now for those who have been aborted? Is it 43 million or something like that? I mean, an incredible. That's just in our country alone. And abortion is a worldwide thing. So, anyways. So I got a series of articles. I kind of want to run through them a little bit, and I want to tie some things together. And since the late 1800s, men have been fascinated by this idea of creating this scientifically engineered society. They want to create the perfect utopian society that does away with God, and we will create perfect people, supposedly. We'll get rid of the ones that don't really count. And it's just real wicked. In this first article, it says that on the 46th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, amid a landscape in which the fate of abortion rights becomes increasingly uncertain, a nearly decade-long effort to amend an archaic New York State law came one step closer to fruition. The New York Senate voted Tuesday to pass the Reproductive Health Act, amending a law that effectively decriminalizes self-managed abortions and abortions performed after 24 weeks. And we skip down. The Reproductive Health Act accomplishes 3 major things. First, it removes abortion from the penal code, ensuring that the procedure is regulated and protected as a health care right. So now there's no criminal penalty whatsoever, at least in New York, for any kind of abortion at any time. No criminal penalty. Secondly, the bill removes a physician-only clause that prohibits other qualified providers like midwives, nurse practitioners, and physician's assistants to administer the procedure. Do you understand what they're saying there? Anybody can do it. I mean, what was the argument for abortion when it first came along? Well, they're going to have to go to the back street alley and get the coat hanger abortion, all that kind of stuff. So with this, well, shoot, why not have the receptionist trained to do it? Why not get the maintenance guy to do it? He's got all the tools in his toolbox he needs for killing a baby. You could go to the barber. You know, barbers used to perform medical procedures. I mean, Fred could have gone to the barber, and the barber would say, "Hey, Fred, what do we do for you today?" He'd say, "Well, take a little off the ears, little taper on the back of the neck, shave the neck a little bit. Oh, by the way, I'm feeling a little down today. Could you bleed me while I'm here?" You know, barbers used to bleed people just as a medical procedure. So, and then lastly, this bill allows for abortions post 24 weeks for patients who are carrying an unviable fetus or when considered medically necessary by an abortion provider. And the way that law is written, it's very vague and very open to a broad interpretation. So if a lady comes in, she's ready to bring her child into the world, and she says, "I don't think I can do this. I'm financially not ready for it." You know, moments before birth, they can kill this baby. I don't know if you recall, I remember watching on C-SPAN, I watched Rick Santorum. He did a really good presentation in the Senate one time on partial birth abortion, how the doctors would go into the womb, take that baby, turn it around, pull it out by its feet, keep its head in the birth canal so that the baby's still technically not born. Use a sharp pair of scissors, stick a hole in the back of the baby's neck and suck out its brains, and then pull out the dead baby. And it was an abhorrent procedure, but I think he did a really good job of bringing it out and showing us what partial birth abortion was about, and that was the debate. So, you know what? I think I saw a tissue somewhere around here. I think I'm going to need one. I see one right over there. Yes. I'm good. So, I got this one here. It says, "How awful is New York's new abortion law?" There was a video that went with this article. I didn't bring the video in, but it goes on to say this video pretty much sums it up. Years after undercover videos provided a window into the macabre world of Planned Parenthood, I am still unable to shake the disturbing images from my brain. New York's new late-term law has left me feeling much the same as it did back in 2015 when I showed how human development begins from the very moment of conception. Watching this video back then today makes me weep even more for our country that we continue to celebrate the killing of the unborn. The Planned Parenthood videos were horrific. "It's another boy," staffers laughed as they pulled the baby apart limb by limb, unaware they were being filmed the entire time. They casually discussed human body parts which were more in demand and which were the best ways to yank them from the womb, but to keep them intact for further use. In the background of this casual conversation was a bowl full of severed legs, heads, hands, and other distinctly recognizable human parts. I've always been appalled at the idea of abortion, but these videos greatly disturb me. How a simple word trick could blind so many people is beyond worldly explanation. Only the spiritual forces of wickedness could produce such a dark and evil society ill that society actually celebrates. And we saw that celebration this week with those senators. They celebrated this thing. After New York passed its controversial new abortion law, late-term abortions are virtually on demand. Simply put, this act will allow for the termination of fully formed babies. The killings can take place if the patient is 24 weeks from the commencement of pregnancy, if there is an absence of fetal viability, or if the abortion is necessary to protect the patient's life or health. Critically, however, the intentional ambiguity of that last part allows for the destruction of the body or of the baby at any point during pregnancy, should the doctor deem the mother's well-being at risk. The term well-being is in itself terrifyingly nonspecific. So with regards to these life and death decisions, physicians will be asked to assess all factors relevant to the well-being of the patient. So effectively, abortion will be available on demand up until birth. If the woman wants to terminate her fully formed child because she claims it is too much for her to deal with, she will be allowed to do so. So, just remember as you watch the video that addresses abortion by pointing out early human development milestones, the pro-choice argument is basically this. Somewhere between conception and the birth, the thing that is definitely not a baby actually becomes a human baby. The best question you can ask someone if they go this route is, when exactly does someone become human? They will not answer this with any specificity for a very good reason. There is no answer. They will offer vague terms like viability and sessions. The problem with these definitions of life is that they are completely arbitrary. So, yet New York just passed a law that allows late-term abortions. It is unconscionable, and America should be praying for God's forgiveness. And what happened in New York, it's just a symptom of what's going on all around the country. And there is a fella, and where I'm going with this, there is a guy, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. I've heard of him. I've known of him for about 15 years. His name is Peter Singer. He's a bioethicist. He was brought on to teach at Princeton. Princeton is an Ivy League university. So this guy is a professor there, and he's able to impart his philosophies into, as Limbaugh would call them, young skulls full of mush. He's able to incorporate and indoctrinate them with his views. So this particular article is Princeton bioethics professor faces calls for resignation over infanticide support. Disability activists have launched a petition demanding Princeton University professor Peter Singer resign over his outspoken support for euthanasia and infanticide. Mr. Singer, who teaches bioethics at the private Ivy League university, has for years promoted public policy that would legalize the killing of severely disabled infants, the petition states. On his faculty page, Mr. Singer argues newborn babies have no sense of their own existence over time, so killing a newborn baby is never equivalent to killing a person. That is, a being who wants to go on living. That does not mean that it's not always a terrible thing to do. It is, but that is because most infants are loved and cherished by their parents, and to kill an infant usually would do wrong to the parents. But sometimes, perhaps because the baby has a serious disability, parents think it better that their newborn infant should die. Many doctors will accept their wishes to the extent of not giving the baby life-supporting medical treatment. That will often ensure that the baby does die. But then Singer goes on to say, my view is different from this, only to the extent that if a decision is taken by the parents and the doctors that it is better that a baby should die, I believe it should be possible to carry out that decision, not only by withholding or withdrawing life support, which can lead to the baby dying slowly from dehydration or an infection, but also by taking active steps to end the baby's life swiftly and humanely. You understand what he's saying there? I won't go on. He actually has gone on to say in other articles, he believes that parents ought to have the right, up until their child is even 2 years old, before that child becomes sentient, aware of himself. If they decide they don't want that child, they should have the right to be able to kill that child. This is long after the child has been born. This is what this guy is advocating. Then he goes on to say, I don't want my health insurance premiums to be higher so that infants who can experience zero quality of life can have expensive treatments. I'll bet you, though, he has no problem with using his tax dollars to pay for the medical expenses of millions of illegal immigrants coming across the southern border. So the guy is just, he's confused. But this guy is in a position where he is teaching people this stuff. You mean the parents?
No, the physicians, the doctors have no right to be able to say, no, I can't abort this baby.
Oh, yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
The physicians that would say, hey, I am not going to commit an abortion for you or don't believe in it, have no ability to work out there in that realm because they're forced to, down the road legally, forced to be able to
As I recall,
force those people to leave that area
Right. They are. Well, you could literally go into a Starbucks and have it done the way they're writing the law. You know, if you happen to have a nurse practitioner also doing part-time work at Starbucks, she can take them in the back room and do the procedure. You know. Yeah. Well, like again, to me, there's an overarching agenda going on here, and I think the end game is where Big Brother government is going to be given the position, is going to have the say over if you're beneficial to society, you get to live. If they determine you're not beneficial to society, they're going to make it that some bureaucratic functionary in the world government headquarters in Brussels is going to decide that you're not worthy of life, and that's okay to take you. Did he not? And we're going there with some of this. In fact, we're not going to even get there today. I'll probably have to pick it up week after next. But yeah, well, in fact, since you bring that up, let's pop on ahead here. You all know who the founder of Planned Parenthood is, right? Margaret Sanger. You ever heard anything about this woman? So, see, sometimes you won't. That's Sanger and Singer. Singer and Sanger. One is present tense, one is past tense. But I'm trying to find it here. Maybe I missed it. Well, let's put minorities crammed into impoverished. This is speaking about Planned Parenthood. Minorities crammed into impoverished areas in inner cities should not be having so many babies. And of course, these minorities, including most of America's immigrants, are inferior in the human race, as are the physically and mentally handicapped. We should require mandatory sterilizations of those less desirable and promote easy access to abortion. And since sex should be free for all, we must provide birth control and abortions to teenagers too. It's all for the greater good, for a more intelligent, liberated, and healthier population. And it goes on to write, feel a bit enraged by the sentiments above? They absolutely sicken me. If you are feeling squeamish or angry too, then you should call your Congress or call your representative in Congress and demand an end to your tax dollars funding Planned Parenthood. You also can sign the petition at liveaction.org. For such are the foundational beliefs of this inherently racist organization and its celebrated founder, Margaret Sanger, who is still lauded on the Planned Parenthood website. Of course, in the lavish online praise of Sanger, conveniently absent is her advocacy for a stern and rigid policy of sterilization and segregation to that grade of population whose progeny is already tainted and whose inheritance is such that objectionable traits may be transmitted to offspring. This is a quote from her book, A Plan for Peace. Or her promotion of the American Baby Code, in which she seeks to protect society against the propagation and increase of the unfit. Also missing is Sanger's fear of her racist views being exposed, as recorded in a letter in 1939 to an ally. We do not want word out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, which is exactly what she was setting out to do. Planned Parenthood is largely the reason why black babies are aborted in America 3 times more often than whites, and Hispanics are killed 1.5 times more often than whites. In fact, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, research compiled by TooManyAborted.com, abortion is the #1 killer of black lives in the United States. Black Lives Matter, right? But not if you're not born. More than heart disease, more than cancer, abortion snuffs out more black lives than other causes of death combined. And this was the objective of Planned Parenthood. This was Margaret Sanger's objective. She was trying to eliminate the black race because she felt they were unfit. I thought I had anyways. 39. And I thought I had the article here. I must have missed it. There was one that links Margaret Sanger was the catalyst. She actually corresponded back and forth with Nazi leaders before the war started. They borrowed her ideas. They put her ideas into effect. And among the people that, oh, here we go. Here it is right here. Well, let's start with this one. This one is entitled Lecture 38, Eugenics and Other Evils. Eugenics is a nice-sounding word, combining as it does the Greek words for good and birth. And Francis Galton, who made up the word and the idea, proposed eugenics for the betterment of mankind. But that's as far as the nice-sounding stuff goes. The actual definition is rather horrible. The controlled and selective breeding of the human race. Galton based his ideas on the theories of his cousin. This is interesting, Charles Darwin. By the beginning of the 20th century, when Darwin's theory was safely embraced by the scientific establishment, eugenics was getting good press. The New York Times gave its constant and positive coverage. George Bernard Shaw said that nothing but a eugenic religion could save civilization. What is eugenics? This is a scientifically engineered society based on people they considered a benefit to society and eliminating those ones who were not a benefit. Only one writer wrote a book against eugenics, a guy named G.K. Chesterton. He wrote a book called Eugenics and Other Evils, and this may be one of his most prophetic books. Eugenics led directly to the birth control movement. All the same players were involved, such as Margaret Sanger, who was a member of the American Eugenics Society and was the editor of Birth Control Review. The primary philosophy was trumpeted on the cover of the Birth Control Review. More children for the fit, less for the unfit. She made it clear who she considered to be the unfit. And I quote, Hebrews, Slavs, Catholics, and Negroes. Who are Hebrews? Jews. She set up her birth control clinics only in their neighborhood. She openly advocated the idea that such people should apply for official permission to have babies, as immigrants have to apply for visas. Got to go to the government and get a license to have children. If they don't deem you worthy, then you don't have a license to have kids. Of course, where do we see this put into practice? We see it in China with their one-child policy. Why don't we hear of this connection between Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, and eugenics? 2 words, Adolf Hitler. He officially instituted eugenics, leading an entire country in carrying out its principles, not only to breed what he believed to be a superior race, but to eliminate everyone whom he considered to be inferior. When did Hitler find early support for his eugenic ideas? Or where did he find it? From Margaret Sanger and her circle. Eugenic scientists from Nazi Germany wrote articles for Sanger's Birth Control Review magazine, and members of Sanger's American Birth Control League visited Nazi Germany and sat in on sessions of the Supreme Eugenics Court and returned with glowing reports of how the sterilization law was weeding out the worst strains in the Germanic stock in a scientific and truly humanitarian way. After World War II, when the world learned of the horrors of the Holocaust and the death camps, the term eugenics was utterly discredited. Margaret Sanger was quick to distance herself from eugenics and began to emphasize the birth control aspect as a feminist issue. And you don't hear about eugenics anymore at all, even though it's part of the underpinning. But unfortunately, the philosophy behind eugenics is still with us. Generally speaking, all of the original arguments in favor of eugenics have become the same arguments in favor of birth control, abortion, euthanasia, and even cloning. Chesterton, the author of this book, understood this, but he understood it in 1910. He wrote his book and published it in 1922. With so many other things, Chesterton saw exactly what we see, only he saw it long before we experienced it. Eugenics and abortion is about the tyranny of the elite, deciding who shall live and who shall die. And if it's about the elite, it's about money. It was the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and other capitalist lords who funded eugenics in the early 20th century. They went on to be major supporters of Planned Parenthood, but he goes on to say they are godless because they don't want to face how inhuman they themselves are. The wealthy industrialist became agnostic, not so much because they does not know where he was, but because he wanted to forget what he was. Many of the rich took to skepticism as the poor took to drink because it was a way out. Eugenics is about the tyranny of science. Forget the tired old argument about religion persecuting science. Chesterton points out the obvious fact that in the modern world it is quite the other way around. It is science that persecutes those who object to them. In the end, when the rapture occurs, for a period of time, I don't know how long it's going to last, there's not going to be a saved person left on the face of the earth. We're all going to be gone. And these people are going to be free to do whatever they want to do without anybody criticizing them. And I often wondered, when Antichrist comes into power, the Bible tells us that he is going to wage war against the saints. There are going to be people who are going to be saved during the tribulation. The 144,000 witnesses are going to go out and evangelize the world. And I often wondered in my own mind, how is it that Antichrist is going to be able to wage this war against the saints, to pull Christians out of their homes and put them to death? Well, it's because they don't fit with society. They're not in line with the common good. And I think that the population right now is being conditioned to think this way. They're being conditioned to surrender issues of life and death to nameless, faceless bureaucrats who sit somewhere else and are going to make the decisions on who lives and who dies based on what your value is to the common collective. So when I see what happened in New York, I'm thinking to myself, to me, abortion is it's the beachhead, it's the toehold for something greater and much more sinister that they have planned. Right. We already didn't. Wasn't it this year? Last year we saw the case that happened in England. The parents did not want their child to die, and the doctors and the state said, yes, your child is going to die, and the state had precedent. The state was able to withdraw life-giving support to that child and allow that child to die, even though the parents, who I always thought had the final say in such matters, they had no say in it. Say again? I know. They had hospitals in other parts of the world that are willing to take them. Canada, United States. I know. I remember. They said, we'll take that baby. But England their court had another objective, and it was this: get us used to the fact that other people are going to decide whether we or our children live or die. And so, it's evil. I never thought things were going to get worse when I was a kid, but they certainly have. Yeah.